I'm Alison Watt, and today for my series of Artists at Large, I'm interviewing Lea Allen, an artist who lives on Bowen Island on the west coast of Canada. It's about a half-hour ferry ride from the suburbs of Vancouver. Lee and I have known each other for a long time. And recently, after kind of long periods of raising our families and being busy with other things, we've been sharing in our art practices a bit more. And I admire Lee's work a lot. And I thought it would be fun to interview her. So let's get started. Hi, Lee. Welcome.
Hi, Allison.
So we are just going to go right into the images because then you get a chance to tell us all of the mysteries of your art practice. All right, so here's our first image.
Okay, the first one here is me looking at you. So out my kitchen window, I look over at Protection Island, which is kind of amusing. And I've painted the scene many times, and I think that I feel a progress in my practice. And the progress is loosening, being more immediate, relying on my instincts more, which is something that I've always strived for. So yeah, I'm really happy with this sketch.
Yeah, I love it. And I love the limited palette. We were talking about it before, and you said it was Payne's Gray and Ochre,
Mhm.
which is just such a beautiful, earthy palette. When I first knew you many years ago, over 40 years ago, you were working a lot in acrylic. So
Yes.
tell us about why you made that transition away from acrylic, because a lot of artists do it the other way around. For instance, when I first started painting, I was painting in watercolor, and
Yeah.
I still paint in watercolor, but I do my larger work, my more involved work in acrylic. So tell us about that.
I think that the transition this time for me, I mean, when I was going to art school, Emily Carr, out in the painting department, they had us out at the PNE in an unused building.
That's the
And
Pacific National Exhibition Grounds, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And we had unlimited uh, canvas and acrylic. It was so nice. Not a lot of, a lot of discussion, not a lot of seminars, but a lot of supplies. And so it made sense for me there. I would mix up huge vats and stretch gigantic canvases because it was the 70s, and coming out of the 70s, that's what we were doing. And
Right.
then and then I when I came to Bowen, I were off the grid. And so we have a septic field. And I just found that it was, and you gave us some good guidance on how to separate acrylic from water so that you can actually, you can't drink it, but you can put it down your down your sink. I just found that cleaning up, you know, basically a lazy painter. Cleaning up was a lot of work. And so I've come back into using watercolors, and I may go back to acrylic if I stretch a canvas again. I will definitely use acrylic. Plastic or no plastic, that's what you do when you're on the canvas. But I love paper, and I love the intensity of the colors in watercolor.
Yeah, I think you're a master watercolorist, and let's look at some more.
Ah, same shot. This is the same view. And this is me. It's a good example of a painting that, I went in with an idea, a very firm idea. I wanted to get that water sparkling. And so it just, I think when you're painting, you can't go in with great expectations like that. It's like forget about it. You know, the the paint's gonna go where it wants to go, and end up looking the way it needs to look. And so this is a painting that was over controlled. And you can see me in the white areas of the trees, of the evergreens, trying to simplify and unify, which kind of works, but it's the same exact view as the one before. And for me, the one before is so much more pleasing to look at. I look at this one here and I get kind of jittery.
But you
It's
really
too
did
much, right?
capture,
It's too much detail.
no, you did capture that light that just shines off the ocean when the big northwesters blow in the summertime
Yeah.
and the sun is high and there's big waves rolling down the strait and you get this just like intense light shining off the Strait of Georgia, or this otherwise known as the Salish Sea.
The
And
same
it's
thing.
just like it's just it really captures that for me.
You know
So
what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna use a trick that I learned from a dear old friend of mine, and I am gonna crop in. I'm gonna crop this into to the part that I like, which is the ocean and the islands showing
uh-huh.
their
Yeah,
distance. Yeah, I'm
yeah.
gonna crop in.
I'm
Yeah,
a big fan of cropping. And of course on paper, we have that luxury.
yeah,
So um yeah. But you also did communicate in the trees here the way that when the light is that intense and shining off that shiny foliage, it's almost white. The light is almost white, right?
mhm,
So I
yeah,
can tell with this painting that you've looked really carefully at the environment.
yeah. Ah, one of my favorites.
Mm,
Personal favorite of mine. I'm down at the beach, or a local beach, and there's an island out there that, just she's floating out there. And so it's a theme. I've painted it many times. And also, I was involved in an ocean conservation where on Bowen Island, we're trying to reestablish eelgrass. And
mhm.
so this is, you know, anchorage like that has a large chain that goes down and is fastened to the ocean floor. And as the tide rises and falls, that chain just tears everything out. It makes a circular pattern and pulls all the eelgrass out. So, this is kind of my wanting to protect that the feeling of, Mother Earth. Sorry, I'm going to get kind of wishy-washy here, but
Mhm.
yeah, it's it's my desire to share my concern, and so it was, yeah,
I know about that program, but
yeah,
I didn't know that you were involved in it, Lee. That's very cool. It's very, very important because
very
eelgrass beds
important.
are so important for the nursery grounds for all kinds of little invertebrates and fish.
Yeah.
So yeah, great. Now is that that's not on the town side of Bowen?
No, it's on our side, and it's my beach is Sealy Beach, and if I go to a little bit to the right, Bowen Bay Beach is a public beach, and it really does. It has an island that looks like a woman lying down on
It
herself.
does. Talk about Mother Earth. Yeah, that's
Mother Earth, yeah,
we'll have to go down there sometime, or
yeah.
maybe
I'll take you
bring
down there.
bring the sailboat in. That's great.
Oh yeah, 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 for sure.
I love this one.
Yeah, I love it too, and everyone that sees it loves it. And I think the reason it's so pleasing is the chance, the happy coincidences that make sense in a naturalistic way. The and it offered me an opportunity to get fussy and fiddly down in the right hand corner, and yet stay loose and show a depth of space without getting too shading and too much shading and too much detail. It was really fun to produce.
Did you use collage in this?
I did.
Yeah.
I did the painting loosely,
Mhm.
and then I tore it up, and I re-glued it down. And
Mhm.
this was acrylic.
Yeah.
I guess you could do it with watercolor, but the acrylic just made it very easy to glue things down. I was using a matte medium to glue.
Yeah, and
And
that would resist watercolor.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so
No,
it
watercolor would run.
yeah,
That's the whole beauty of acrylic. It's so stable.
yeah.
And yeah, no, it was super fun to do, and I will definitely be trying more of that.
Yeah, it's very joyful and very summer feeling, and I think, all the mark making is so engaging,
Mm,
and this kind of flow of darks that kind of comes in here and then flows up through. It's just
yeah.
I love everything about it.
Yeah, it was sure fun to do.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. Now, here's me trying to do that again on my own. And I don't know if it's I took the photo, just it's taken in my studio without proper lighting, but it's a lake that we have that I've painted many times. But I had fun with using a dressmaker's pattern in the upper right
Mhm.
and rubbing from a carved table that I have down on the bottom,
Okay,
and taking the tissue paper from doing that and gluing it down.
right. It's an interesting element. What is this?
That is a table that my mother brought back from New Zealand, deeply carved. So it's an old English piece of furniture. And it's stayed with me. It's nice and tall. It used to be called, you would call that table, it's high. It was for a fern or a plant,
Uh-huh. Oh,
a
yeah.
plant table. Yeah.
And so you're integrating it into here. What were your
Yes.
thoughts with that? It's such a surprising and delightful element. So I've actually been meaning to ask you this because I've seen this piece before. Tell
Yeah.
me about
Yeah.
your thoughts about integrating it there.
I think that it's there because I kind of like the idea of the patterning in nature. Like if you were to go in with your magnifying glass to those trees on the far side of the lake, you'd see something like that growing.
Mhm.
It's geometry, it's nature.
Well, it's
And
almost
so,
like a cross section of a tree branch or
right. Oh, that's interesting.
I love that. And yeah, so this could almost be a reflection here. Anyway, I like the surprise of this visual element, and it's interesting to take that thought about the patterning in nature,
Nature.
in the way that microcosm reflects macrocosm in nature, and the whole
Exactly.
idea about fractal growth and things like that is an interesting um, maybe an interesting part of the ideas in this painting. But
I wish that the dressmaking pattern showed up more.
it's up in
But
here.
yeah,
I
it's
can
up
see
in
the
there.
arrow. I see the
I
arrow.
know.
Yeah,
It's a little clue.
yeah,
But I love using tissue paper.
I do too. I love the
Yeah.
way it just disappears. It
Yeah.
kind of floats on the top, so any
Mm-hmm.
mark on it
Mm-hmm.
will it's there, but it's kind of floating. I really like that, and I like
I
the kind of craft color of the dressmakers.
Yeah, yeah, I love the color of it too. Um, I use the tissue paper to try out more vigorous, looser um, paint brush, almost like a sumi stroke.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll do that with my watercolors as well. I'll get ink out and play around with that. See if the mark that I'm about to make is the one that I really want. And
And
it allows me to figure out where I want to put it. You can
so
move it
you
around.
lay it over, you piece and
Yeah,
see. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
so good.
yeah,
Such a great tool.
yeah.
Yeah,
This one is so interesting. This is like a wicked Emily Carr.
exactly. It's very much an Emily Carr, and I have to give her full credit. It was um, it was a drawing that I saw in the Vancouver Art Gallery. Sort of inspired this. Totally
Mhm.
different. If we put the two together, you wouldn't recognize it. But it was. I'd painted it before, and then I took some classes, and I realized that the splash on the left and the right, where it looks like water peeling
Mhm.
out,
Yeah. Mhm.
um, is actually watercolor
Hmm.
with a little bit of, I guess it's gouache,
Uh-huh.
making it to sit up on top.
Right.
And up on the top, the blue again, I get it to sit on top by adding gouache.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's almost like it's got a kind of mechanical
I
look
wanted it to.
to
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Hmm.
Almost like the machinery of the forest, right? I
Yes.
don't know what your
And
thought was, but that's how I'm reading it.
that's very true. And do you see the boat? I was thinking of the arrival, with
It is here.
yeah, the hull of the boat
Yeah,
and
I
us
do see that.
arriving with all our viruses and, you know, giving First Nations all of the diseases that they were not ready for.
Yeah.
And I was thinking of that, the spreading of that. Our,
No
our
wonder the painting's so dark.
yeah, it's really dark
Yeah.
and yeah, it's a bit sinister. You wouldn't put it up in the baby's room.
And well, it's got its own kind of beauty for sure.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Okay, I think that is those are all the images, right?
Yeah.
And so let's have a chat.
Hmm.
So I have a few questions for you.
Yeah.
So I
Good.
think we did talk a little bit about, or we have a sense of how you choose your imagery. It really does seem to, at this point in your life, really reflects your very rural existence on this heavily forested island, surrounded by an active ocean and lots of
Mhm.
light. And do you have anything else to say about that? About how you choose your imagery? Do you bring in, I have a question about, do you bring your ideas to the work, or do the ideas emerge as you
They
work?
definitely emerge.
Yeah.
Um, as I was saying with that first one, I go in with an idea of where I think the magic is. And if I, continue on with the piece and I don't try and control it too much, it will develop its own purpose
Mhm.
and story. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, this whole thing, I look back to Cezanne,
Hmm.
and they say that he was the first modernist, the first true modernist that, you know, took the whole notion of the feeling of the painter, and his relationship to his materials really was all that painting could do, because around that time photography was just starting.
Right.
And so what a shock, for painters, like, we don't need to be doing that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you can almost track the dissolution of
Yep.
realistic painting with the development of photography,
Yes, you
and
can.
kind of re-examination of how to paint light.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can. And out of that, I think, I mean, I see the whole, we had a real forward looking and innovative group of artists here, conceptual artists out of the Western Front, and people that were using photography in their art,
Mm,
and people like Stan Douglas,
yeah.
creating these worlds using, all the modern tools that are available to him. Well, back in the 70s, I knew Stan and
Mhm.
his wife, Mina Tatina, and she's a painter and has remained a painter, believe it or not.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And I remember she and I in conversation saying, I said, well, you know, here you are, your studio's down in Gastown, and if you look out your window there and you see that tree, would you bother painting that tree? Her art was very abstract. It's very abstract, but based on nature. And she
Mhm.
said, no, 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 no. There's a big waste of time. Don't
Why?
don't try and replicate the tree, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Let it be in your art,
Right.
but you have to show the relationship that you have with it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I always think that, everything comes through the lens of the artist. I mean, speaking of
Yes.
photography. And
Yeah.
so, and I also think that all painting is abstract anyway, because it's in
It is.
taking the three-dimensional world and making it into two dimensions.
Yeah.
But I personally have moved more from a representational type of painting because I started out as a botanist and,
Yeah.
drawing plants realistically, especially
Yeah.
plants.
Realistically,
And
beautifully
yeah,
too.
and moving more into a kind of, yeah, letting the image come through me in my work, rather than trying to replicate it. But that's just very personal, isn't it? I mean, it's hard to make rules about that because, except I guess for me, my own personal rule is just to be open, to just stay open as I
Stay
work.
open. Yeah.
So I can sort of see how the materials are going to work in a particular painting, and how that subject is going to eventually emerge. And a lot of the time I'm more kind of engaged with the materials than the subject these
Mhm.
days. But
Mhm.
anyway, we want to talk about you, not me.
No,
So
but it's interesting to hear you describing that sensation of trying to step aside. My process is I get all set up and I'll sort of have a palette, ready to go. Tubes, paint has been squeezed.
yeah.
And I'm, I've got a drawing down, but I'm really relying on my intuition, as I said earlier, and also the notion that the fact that I've mixed paints and I got a brush in my hand, there's the subject right there. I'm 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 practicing, I'm creating. And I remember as a child, I remember the feeling. I had a blackboard and chalk in my room, and I just remember going in there and the sensation of creating something and having,
Powerful.
yeah, and having full command, and full engagement with what I had created. And as a little kid, boy, those little chalk marks,
You
they were
know,
very powerful for me.
it's interesting. It ought to be interesting to canvas a lot of artists and see
Yeah,
how many had that experience in childhood. I certainly did. Just that
yeah,
sense of creating a world of your own, being
yeah,
lost in it, and being so, engaged with your crayon box.
yeah, yeah,
um, so you've talked a little bit about your path into becoming an artist because you went to art school,
yeah.
and I know that you did other work, and raised your family and so on.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
what would you how would you describe your path, or can you in a concise way?
Yeah, I can try. I think that it was, becoming an artist. It started, like I said, with that childhood experience, and from that moment on, it was a desire to recreate that feeling of being in control. So
Right.
there, I'm admitting I'm a control freak, but
Yeah.
it was, and so it gives me great pleasure to get better at the technical side of it, and I would say that, yeah, uh, having yeah, continuing to yeah, just continuing to study and to get better. I mean, that's what keeps me going. And
Yeah.
I did take 15 years out when I went to Toronto to to increase my. I had a business where I'm a publisher. I was a publisher, and I was finding that more and more of my clients were in Toronto, And so I went to Toronto. Stephen, my husband, had a job opportunity there as well. And so, yeah, that was interesting. It was, I put my brushes down and
But did it
focused
affect,
mostly.
did it affect your art life in other ways because you're exposed to so much art in Toronto?
It did, especially because a lot of my clients, well, one of my favorite clients was Contact, the
Mhm.
photography festival. And so
Mm,
there I was, meeting and working with, um, world-class photographers and helping them put that festival together. Yeah, it had an effect, but the house I was in and my son living with us, I didn't have studio space, and that's kind of a lousy excuse because Toronto's full of studio space, beautiful studio spaces. But um, yeah,
do you
yeah,
miss it? Do you miss the being at the center of the Canadian art world?
I do, I do
Yeah,
a little bit, but the payoff is being here. I think of myself walking off. We lived on right on Yonge Street.
right.
Yeah, just north of Eglinton. And so, stepping out the door, we were a block from Young Street and realizing that as an old person, I think it was because I was seeing a woman, I was coming out of Starbucks full of steam, piss and vinegar. And here's this old gal, and she was moving really slowly. And I just thought, yeah, I don't want to be here when I'm older.
Uh-huh. And now
Right.
you can move through your beautiful, beautiful garden
Yeah.
instead. Yeah.
Yeah. In my studio, I've got it.
Now, speaking of that, and your beautiful studio, what is your perfect day?
Okay, my perfect day. Oh, I'm almost embarrassed to admit it. It's so perfect.
Go ahead.
um,
Everybody can just enjoy it vicariously.
okay. So my perfect day is I'll take today for an example. I'll wake up and my husband and I will will have our traditional soft-boiled egg and we'll look at our screens and have a cup of coffee. I'll come down and do my yoga 20 minutes, get on the bike for 20 minutes, then hop into the,
Wow, good for you.
yeah, yeah, I've always done my practice. It's important to me. Then I'll have a quick shower, jump in our new hot tub, our new cedar hot
What?
tub. Yeah, I know. No,
Sign me up.
you gotta check it out. And it
Right.
overlooks the garden. And so I'll pad around in there for a couple of 20 minutes max. That's all they allow. Apparently, that's all you should stay. And and then come out, have lunch. That's how long it takes me from 8 o'clock until noon to do that. Uh, have lunch and then go down to the studio.
So you work best in the afternoon.
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like to kind of take care of that other stuff that might interfere in my concentration when I'm
Right.
down in the studio. I want to get that done, right?
And
Walk.
then and so you work in your studio for the
Mhm.
afternoon
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then
And
the
then
whole day, you gotta tell us about the whole day, Lee.
it's not every day in there.
Yeah.
I'll go meet friends and we'll go for walks and
Mhm.
I think isolation, Agnes Martin talked about this. Uh, it's good. I wouldn't want a crew in my studio while I'm trying to create,
Mm.
but I think it's important to stay in touch with people and to
Yeah.
build friendships and to have that.
Creative work can be a bit lonely sometimes, and, it's nice to have a community around you to
Hmm.
I feel that way too.
Hmm. I think,
Um,
yeah.
so finally, what piece of advice
Hmm.
or, pieces of advice would you have for other artists or, artists that are maybe just coming back to art after years out doing other things or just starting to learn to paint or even with a regular practice?
Hmm. I love giving advice.
Go for it.
I would, I would, I would tell a young person who's thinking of going into painting, especially, not for the faint of heart.
Mm.
Let me quote Cezanne. I got a good one here for you. What does he say? Uh, oh yes, Cezanne says, "I've made some progress. Why so late? With such difficulty? Is art really a priesthood that demands the pure of heart, the pure in heart, who must belong to it entirely?" Yeah, I think you do have to.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're not gonna get satisfaction from it. You won't progress, you'll be frustrated. So yeah, you really have to
Yeah.
understand that it priesthood is maybe a little bit religious, but
Yeah. I think that's really true. I mean, there's got to be a sense of something not greater than yourself, but if it's all about ego, for instance,
mm,
um, it's going to be hard to keep going because there's so many fails as you learn
mm,
about materials and how to master your subject material as well. And or if you're overly focused on the commercial, and some artists do have to be to survive, of course, but um it can be hard to endure, unless you have that kind of greater sense of dedication to the ideal of art, or
yeah.
something greater than yourself, I
The
think.
ideal, I guess, you and I, when we talk, we get right into it, but we've talked about this, like the ideal of beauty. It's so different than making money off your art. You want to make money off your art, you go into textile design, you go into illustration.
Graphic design, yeah.
Yeah, you go
Definitely.
into illustration. It's a wonderful path to take. But if you want to be a painter, especially in this day and age, nah, don't even
The
think
hard
about
road.
it. Don't even think about selling it.
Do you
You,
think painting is, there was a time when, was kind of just assumed painting was dead? Do you think that's true?
oh God, no. Mm-mm. You and I are going to lead it out of the dark.
You better get to
You
work.
already are, Allison. No, there's life left in painting. But there's a lot of people that say, and I mean, talking about Stan Douglas and talking to Stan Douglas, he's just like, well, no, we're not pushing pigment around on surfaces anymore. But
Yeah.
there's a tradition that people understand, and
I think
want it on their walls. They want to
I
live.
know it's true. Like, I think that it might have been it might have lost favor in art schools for a time,
Definitely.
and it may be still that way. I don't know.
It is still
But
that way.
yeah, but
Yeah,
it hasn't with people, just people in the way they live
you're
in their
right.
homes.
Yeah.
And I think, well, for one thing, it might be hard to fit a huge piece of conceptual art in our homes, right? But but
Yeah.
um, but
People
also,
try. I've seen people try.
I think that paintings, because they're two-dimensional, flat art, they're to me they're kind of like windows, and
Yes.
it's almost like having other windows in our homes that we can kind of travel through. I know, going back to childhood, when I was a
Mhm.
kid, I mean, we did not have interesting art in
No,
our
neither did I. Yeah.
yet I lived inside that art, some of it, just spent
Hmm.
hours looking at it, and imagining myself
Mm.
in those rather unimaginative landscapes. But
Yeah.
they were still like little windows to move through. So
Isn't it
I don't
interesting?
I
Yeah.
don't think
You remember them, eh? You
oh
remember the images?
oh yeah. Um,
Oh, that's sweet.
I don't think painting is going away inside the spaces that we live and move in. I don't think so.
I don't think it's going away on our phones, our devices either. Look at all the sharing on Instagram.
Yeah, and I don't think it's going away as far as people making it, because there is
No. Yeah.
an urge. There is this, and in some ways, that's having a huge renaissance. So many people coming to drawing and painting,
I agree. Yeah.
and getting
Hmm.
so much pleasure, so much joy out of making art, and I mean
Mhm.
all kinds of art, and also beautiful things that might have been or still might be considered craft, but
Yeah.
just making. And
Yeah.
but I think there is something special about drawing and painting, that
Mhm.
transmission of the image through the hand onto the magical world of the canvas or the paper.
Mhm.
I
The
don't think that's
two-dimensional.
going away. Yeah,
No, it's not. And isn't it a renaissance? I totally agree with you. I
yeah,
know so many people picking up pencil and brush.
yeah, yeah, and it's great. I think, well, we could talk for a long time about why
Yeah.
we weren't making art, or a lot of people weren't making art for all those years, those lost years sometimes that happen
Yeah.
between childhood and middle age.
I
But
think I think for you and I, it may have been, the joy in raising the children and making the home. Took me away from it, that's for sure. I
yeah, and it's
always
just busy. It's busy, and
busy. Yeah.
yeah. But anyway, it has been great to have this chat.
Yeah, Allison, we could go on and on.
We could, and we will in your hot tub.
Uh-huh.
So thanks
I'll
so
read
much, Lee.
quotes. I'll read quotes from art history to you.
Very good. All right, so we'll talk to you again soon, and thanks for coming.
Okay, thanks, Allison.
Bye.
Been fun. Bye-bye.